Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more title update 1. Today we're finally covering the SWAX builds for the new meta update. For this one, it's surprisingly straightforward for an optimal DPS setup update, which is certainly nice. Pretty much thanks to the new Zoh Shia equipment, we can make one quick update that just works easy. Of course, it does introduce new comfy options, which are welcome, which means we can do a whole other set for that. But with things to talk about like the changes to Mantle, and subtle important changes to skills like maximum might and more, we have a few things to cover. Not to mention, this new awesome looking Zoh Shia SWAX people might be wondering about. So right before we get into it, I just want to do the usual credit. A big thank you to Josh as always for the builds and math of this video. While I am the one that plays SWAX, together we discuss the function of SWAX and what would make it the strongest, and it's Josh behind the builds and the math that we have today. But also thanks to Cotton for doing all of his testing with the Zoh Shia weapons and the new skill Whiteflame Torrent that we'll highlight at some point soon. So let's get into it. We'll begin with the all important topic that is your weapon. There are three that I guess I should highlight here. Firstly, the familiar Paralysis Classic that we were using last time. So this is an artian weapon with 225 base raw, the 5% base affinity, and then the paralysis that comes with it when you craft it as that status. This means it's a power valve type, which means it's obviously going to hit harder, but it takes a bit longer to get it amped. So that's where a skill like Focus comes in on the offensive decorations. In terms of the production bonus and reinforcement bonuses for this then, it's what it was before. Your 3 attack infusions for the production, but then for the reinforcements, your goal is going to be 4 attack boost and the 1 sharpness. The 1 sharpness helps you maintain your white sharpness quite a lot, and SWAX is a more forgiving weapon for that in general, thanks to the slower, less common hits, especially with full release. But with our meta set, if you did roll, say, 1 affinity boost or something like that, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but a perfect version would be the 4 boosts. However, there is something you might want to consider when we're thinking about specifically Zoh Shia. Zoh Shia's hit zones are amazing for Dragon, so when you expose the head and the wing arms, that becomes incredible hit zones for both Dragon and physical hits. So you might be seeing speedrunners using a specific combo with all kinds of weapons including SWAX, which is essentially the same setup we just looked at, but instead of having paralysis, they have the kind of base Dragon that comes with technically building a Dragon SWAX. The goal on the craft of this would be the same though, all attack infusion, all attack boost, with the 1 sharpness boost as before. The reason for this is because you're going to get more value out of each attack boost compared to the element boost. We recently did the math on this to showcase it in the Dual Blades video, but essentially you're getting value out of each element boost, but you're getting slightly more value out of the attack boost in the context of the exposed head of Zoh Shia, which has some of the best element hit zones of the tier 3 monsters that we have right now. Even in that context, basically more attack is better, but you can double dip and get that little bit of dragon by crafting an artian dragon weapon even so, without having to commit to element really in any relevant way. I think it's unreasonable to ask you to pull this out of the bag for 1 monster, so I would probably strongly recommend you stick with the Paralysis one if you've got like a perfect 5 out of 5 and not pull your hair out. It's just something to aim for this setup on a dragon weapon. Naturally, this calls into question the Zoh Shia SWAX and how this is just the same thing, right? You've got good raw, you've got the same affinity, and you have dragon on it. But obviously, there's some key differences here. The artian version has significantly more dragon on it, and it has 5 more raw at the base. There is something to be said about the fact that this is an element vial compared to a power vial, but the problem with the Zoh Shia SWAX that really holds it back, of course, is the decoration slots. More than anything, that's the big problem here. In your offensive slots right now, what you're looking for is 3 crit boosts, so that's a 3 slot decoration there, 3 focus, so that's a 3 decoration slot, and then we get 1 level handicraft with it to help maintain the sharpness for the fight. Alongside that, you've got power prolonger at level 3, and then another level of handicraft, again to help the sharpness as much as possible. What really matters here is the power prolonger, because without it, you've got 45 seconds of amped state. With it, you've got 90 seconds. And you want to reach amped state as soon as possible and stay in it as long as possible so that you can just be full release spamming as much as possible. So you need 3 power prolonger. It's not really up for debate. Here's the offensive decorations that you kind of end up with then in that situation. You've got the 3 power prolonger, you've got the 1 handicraft, cool. You have 2 focus instead of 3, which is not ideal, but it's something. And then we can't really fit anything of massive use here, so like 1 crit boost is fine, I guess. In this case, I would run the Enhancer Handicraft, and then the other slots would go straight to crit boost, so I have overall 3 levels of crit boost, and just drop the benefits of focus, which obviously is an issue. Ultimately, you're sacrificing a lot of output potential thanks to the decorations, the sharpness benefits there too, and your ability to build up your amped state faster with more levels of focus. So to say that it's inconvenient, these decoration slots, is saying very little. Now, having said all of that, you do get the Whiteflame Torrent. So let's talk about this skill. As it says, you have a chance to deal additional damage after landing an attack. But how does this really work? Well, we've covered it quite a few times recently, so I'm going to be pretty quick on this. You hopefully know by now. But no matter what kind of weapon you're using with the Zoh Shia weapon, Whiteflame Torrent procs 50 damage regularly. Kind of like the blast status, but in its own way. Every 3 seconds, it's possible for your next instance of damage to proc that 50 damage. And it becomes more and more likely if the last one didn't work, becoming essentially guaranteed on that 9th second. We found in our testing, thanks to Cotton, that on average, faster weapons, SNS, dual blades, that kind of thing, they're able to pop it every 6 seconds or so with constant attacks. It was slightly less than that for slower weapons like Switch Axe and Greatsword. So over the length of 10,000 damage, attacking consistently for that time, it equated to about 4.5% of the overall damage for faster weapons, but it was worse for slower weapons such as Greatsword. It's interesting though, because with this skill, you get more value out of those 50 damage pops the worse you play. Like the longer you have no output because you're busy rolling or running around, the worse your build is, resulting in less effective output. You know, the more relevant those stacks up of 50 damage become relative to the rest of your output. So Whiteflame is a good skill, kind of like a better blast. It's just obviously in exchange for quite a few nasty sacrifices. Less raw, less element, worse decoration slots, which absolutely should have been a 3-3-1 decoration slot at least in my opinion. It's not a bad weapon, it works, and you can run it against Zoh Shia if you want, like I do with longsword. But it is a big sacrifice in different aspects to run this over like a proper artian setup. I just don't know why they didn't give it better decoration slots. Moving on to interesting changes that happened from Title Update 1 that are going to be relevant for this build. Firstly, we have the Mantle changes, starting with Corrupted Mantle. If you aren't aware, Corrupted Mantle was nerfed. It now lasts 30 seconds less time than before, and it also has a roughly 10% loss on the motion values of those extra damage procs compared to before said nerf. This was alongside the 5% less raw you get at phase 2 and 10% less affinity overall at phase 2 as well. Nerfed in quite a few ways, and yet it remains a pretty damn good option. They buffed the other mantles though, like for example Rocksteady Mantle. This provides a 60% damage reduction compared to 30% before this update. Meanwhile, something like Evasion Mantle that gives you that temporary attack boost after landing a perfect evade, the mantle itself lasts longer now. So I'd say there's actually some argument for SWAX in particular for the other options and benefits they provide, like say going Rocksteady so that you can just start blindly full releasing now you're amped over and over. But there's still no denying the value in just popping on Corrupted Mantle and benefiting from it immediately, without even thinking about it. I would say it's worth giving the other mantles a go and see if you enjoy what they offer you, but it's more of an option now than before. The other thing that's changed that's very relevant for the Switch Axe builds is maximum might, and more people seem to be catching on to this now. But it's been something we've been talking about in our different builds, so I better mention it here too. It's still giving you the 30% affinity while active at level 3, but how it works is slightly different and more forgiving. Essentially, you lose maximum might when you're not at maximum stamina for 2 seconds or more, and then once you return to full stamina, 2 seconds of time passes, and then the buff comes back. How it used to work is the moment you stepped out of 100% stamina, it would cut into those 2 seconds of freedom you have before losing maximum might. So if I cut off half a second here and then get back to full stamina, the next time I'd have 1.5 seconds to get back to full stamina. If I did that again, the next time I'd need 1 second before it drops maximum might. So basically every time you dropped out of maximum stamina, it would make it more and more likely that maximum might would drop eventually. But as you're seeing in Title Update 1, this little stealth buff they gave it, I can infinitely drop out of max stamina and return to it within 2 seconds, and then it's always 2 seconds as that buffer to get back to max stamina without dropping it. So basically it's just a lot more forgiving, and so you might be noticing your maximum might is active more often, which is certainly a good thing. Before this change, people were working in the Fulgur Anjanath set, the 2-piece, which would grant you extra stamina gauge, giving you some buffer on your max stamina. protecting it. Because that's not so important or necessary anymore, it's changed the builds in what they need or will help them function at consistent levels. And so yeah, we're also not using it anymore. Switch Axe is one of those weapons that can benefit from maximum might really effectively though, because you don't actually use any stamina for your main attack, full release, various combos, and we have multiple attacks that move us forward without actually costing any stamina. The axe is obviously a great example of that with the forward slash and the forward overhead slash with great movement there. But you also have the moving transform into sword mode and back, and then straight into the forward overhead and so on and so on. And all of it costs no stamina to do, so maximum might's just really reliable with the Switch Axe. Alright, so let's cover the two builds we'll actually be highlighting here. We'll start though with the max DPS set. Unfortunately, it's really quite simple. Here is the equipment that we're running. Every armor piece is in beta, just to keep this simple, but we have 4-piece gore, where we're wearing all gore pieces except for chest. This allows us to access the 4-piece bonus of gore, the Black Eclipse level 2. If you're unaware, by having 2-piece with gore, that causes frenzy to be triggered on you. This allows you to use the skill antivirus to help cleanse it and get affinity bonuses from that. But at level 4, you also get 15 raw for the same concept, which is just really nice. But with that, we have the new piece here, the Numinous Shroud, which is the Zoh Shia chest piece. It's a funny chest piece because you get 2 levels of agitator and then the 1 decoration slot, which is a 3 size. Previously, you'd use the Blango chest for this purpose, which is 2 levels of agitator and 1 decoration slot, but instead it was a 2 slot size for that decoration. So it's essentially the same thing, but 1 slightly bigger decoration slot, which is important, but also higher rarity, so more defense. Like I said, super simple change for the build. An interesting bonus of this fact though, is with the pieces we're wearing, we're able to achieve adrenaline, thanks to the scale layering set bonus. So when we get to 40% health or lower, our stamina starts to deplete a lot less, which is a minor help. Here are the decorations that we're using for this skill list. But as you can see in our weapon, we have crit boost at level 3, we have focus at level 3, we have power prolonger at level 3, and then there's the bonus levels on focus and enhancer. We have those levels of handicraft just to help maintain sharpness. If you were wanting to maximize your DPS completely though, you could go for 5 crit boost and drop the benefits of focus and handicraft entirely, which I personally wouldn't want to do because of the benefits of having that focus and the handicraft, but of course it would make your crits hit harder. If you need to take a pause and look at the decorations we're using for our armor skill list though, feel free. But we use this to achieve 5 out of 5 agitator, 4 constitution, full counterstrike, maximum might, antivirus, and the 1 level of burst. With this just sort of passively comes a bit of coalescence and evade window and flinch free, which is nice but not important. I almost forgot there, by the way, that for the charm, for the talisman, we have the counter charm for the 3 levels of Counterstrike, just to highlight that for you. And on that note, I'll just reference Counterstrike for Switch Axe because it's particularly good. 25 raw for 45 seconds at level 3 is the effect of the skill. It's absolutely incredible, but you do need to know how to activate it, so might as well tell you. You need to be hit by the monster in a way that knocks you down, which is the reliable way to get that no matter what weapon you're using with the skill. Thanks to that, every weapon, every setup can use basic barrel bombs to send yourself flying, which as you can see will trigger Counterstrike just like you took a monster hit. It does minor damage, and what's neat about that is you could put that down before the start of a fight or in the middle of a fight as a monster's moving to a different area. You just reset that using 1 barrel bomb. Super straightforward. But another detail about the Switch Axe is the ability to sword counter, which is essentially giving you hyper armor to prevent you being knocked down. While it's going, you can still activate Counterstrike, as you can see, and that's our reliable way with this weapon to always have Counterstrike going. So you don't need to take a hit from a monster, you don't need to barrel bomb yourself every minute or so. You can just land your sword counters, which you'll do in normal gameplay anyway, and get the skill, which is really nice. So for this DPS set then, we have the math to cover. Starting with a base raw of 225 on that proper Artian setup. We increased this by 25 from Counterstrike 3, 10 from Agitator with a 50% uptime, 8 from Burst 1, and 15 from the Gore 4-piece, bringing us to 283. Multiply this by 32% thanks to the white sharpness, and we get 374. Overall, this set has 67.5% affinity if you assume 50% uptime for Agitator. Since last time we based things off 5 crit boost, we do the same here, where you drop the focus decorations. So that's a 40% damage increase on your crits, but since that's only 67.5% of the time, it's more like a 27% increase of that damage. So we'll multiply that by the 374, and that brings us to roughly 474 effective raw. But don't forget that's based on a 50% uptime for Agitator. For most of us, 60% is more realistic, and if you get really smooth runs, you can get even higher than that, like speedrunners or ending the fight sooner so the monster was enraged for longer. So it's just something to keep in mind. But next we have the Comfy set, which is just going to include some different Zoh Shia pieces so that we get that constant regen that a lot of people are really enjoying using. Obviously, it just feels a lot more comfortable. So if you want to run this, it will be less DPS, but not a lot less DPS. And if you enjoy it more when you play it, then go for it. So for the equipment, it's all in beta. And as you can see, we have Zoh Shia helmet, chest, and waist. And then we have the gore 2-piece with the gloves and the boots in particular. Still using the counter charm, the talisman, for the 3 levels of Counterstrike. Now, as before, again, the offensive decorations, we have crit boost 3, we have focus 3, power prolonger 3, and then there's 2 levels of extra handicraft to help with the sharpness. This is really nice, but technically you could have more DPS by having 5 crit boost, just like we're looking at with the other set in the math. And if you want to do that, go for it, but man, does focus make a big difference. Here are the decorations though overall to achieve this skill list. Maxing out Agitator, Counterstrike, Maximum Might, Antivirus. Then we have 2 levels of Weakness Exploit, 2 levels of Constitution, Burst, 1 Evade Window by chance, Recovery Speed, Stamina Surge, Coalescence, Flinch Free, a lot of extra levels of all the different pieces. Mainly though, you have the decorations to achieve the main skill list, and then you're going to have a free 1 slot and a free 2 slot, where you can see that I've put the Refresh Jewel in, which gives me that 1 level of Stamina Surge to help with the stamina, and I've got the Physique, which gives me the 1 level of Constitution to get to 2 levels overall, just to help with the stamina in general. If you want to use that 1 slot and that 1-2 slot differently, be my guest. But what this does in terms of bonuses, it provides you 2-piece of the super recovery, the Zoh Shia Pulse. So you're basically healing through that red hurt damage and then healing beyond that, much like if you played World, Valhasak's armor set. You can increase the rate at which you recover that red portion with recovery speed levels, getting you into that overtime healing after that even quicker. As usual, 2-piece of gore, giving you frenzy so you can do the whole antivirus thing. And you also get Guardian's protection, because you're wearing 3 pieces overall of Guardian gear, so that means you've got less elemental and unique damage while in Wyvria, including when you're in the Zoh Shia fight, which helps you be, I guess, bursted or 1-shot less, which is certainly helpful. So yes, it's a very comfy set for sure, but slightly less effective raw. Let's talk about that. Here's the math for the Artian weapon then. 225 raw as the base as usual, an extra 25 from Counterstrike 3. We've got 5 agitator, so we're counting this in terms of math at 50% uptime as usual, so 10 raw there, 8 from burst 1, bringing us to 268. Times that by the white sharpness, that brings us to 354. This time we have 77.5% affinity overall though, and so crit boost will impact this even more. So if you commit to this in a comfy way, just 3 crit boost is more like a 26.35% increase to your damage. So we'll multiply that by the 354, bringing us to 447 effective raw. However, the other side of that is if you went to 5 crit boost, so if you did, the effective roll would be higher, it'd be 464. But that's all assuming the agitator has 50% uptime like we always do for this math. In many cases, it's going to have more like 60% or even 65% higher uptime on average, which pushes the effective roll even higher than that. So just something to keep in mind. But there you have it. That's our updated SWAX builds for Title Update 1. It'll be up to you if you want to go that max DPS option or maybe more on the comfy side. But I do think the max DPS update is pretty relaxed. Certainly compared to other max DPS sets like the recent dual blades that we did that didn't have the usual evade window levels that you'd want for a comfy set. Meanwhile, SWAX doesn't really have that kind of problem, it's just a nice and simple update. Remember, feel free to use the Zoh SWAX if you really want to, if you don't like the idea of chasing a new perfect artian that has that bit of dragon. Here's hoping we get layered weapons in Title Update 2 though. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.